Welcome back to the Law&Crime Network. We have an exciting afternoon here. We have Len Kachinsky, who was just acquitted in a Wisconsin court, on the line right now. Len, do we have you on the line?
You sure do.
Len, thank you so much for joining us. You must have had a very emotional day today in court. Tell us how you feel. What was your day like?
My day was getting a rush to get there before they started deliberating at 8:30, and then a long time just waiting and having jury questions come in and status, and the judge had to finally read a instruction to the jury telling them that the next jury could decide this case as well as they could, and they finally, after some more deliberations, came back with a not guilty verdict.
Len, I want to get your perspective on those harrowing moments when the jury came back with a note saying that they were hung. What were you thinking? What was in your mind?
I like anyone else, I was curious what the division was and whether it was in our favor or in favor of the state. So as I had throughout the trial and in the last few months, had contingency plans if the verdict is this, and then this is what we'll do, and so forth. And I relied, of course, on the advice of my attorney, Brant Swardinsky, who just did a brilliant job.
Well, Len, congratulations on that. As the trial unfolded, were there moments that you felt nervous for your liberty? I mean, you were facing some pretty significant jail time.
Yes, as a matter of fact, Mandy Bartelt, the alleged victim, had filed a victim impact statement asking that I go to prison for 18 months. So I didn't think the judge would do that, even if the worst happened, but it still was very, very concerning. And, the loss of licenses potentially and stuff like that would go with a felony conviction were definitely going to be a problem.
Certainly that must have been a concern. Now, I'm interested, as you sat there and you heard Ms. Bartelt's testimony, obviously part of the opening statement that your attorney presented was that while the facts might be the same, there was a different interpretation on both ends. As you saw her testimony and you saw the emotion, how did you feel?
Well, I wondered, there's definitely emotion there and crime, which I'd seen before in other hearings related to this case. But I looked at, what were the incidents that caused this terrible crying from somebody? Is there something a reasonable person would start crying about? And you think of things that she claimed disturbed her, like me being in the office, reading and, watching, just waiting for somebody to come in and observe some customer service and occasionally making cat noises. Is that something that would frighten a reasonable person? Or this thing with finding her mother visiting her home because of a feed on Facebook Friends, or nearby neighbors, rather, which showed she was there and telling her about it so her mom could change her settings if she wanted to. And actually, I told her about it several times, about when I'd seen it when I was driving to Freighter for medical treatment. So I thought the things that she claims were so disturbing really were not as such that an ordinary person would be nearly that disturbed about or unwilling to talk about and compromise and work things out like they do in most workplaces. I think the administration basically took the position with her that when she made the complaint she made just before Memorial Day, they were going to back her 100%. Mandy Bartelt can do no wrong. Len Kachinsky is a perp, and we're going to proceed accordingly. That simply was not the way to deal with the situation. And as a result, we've got this not guilty verdict, a personnel mess, and I think that's just showed poor judgment to treat it that way. And I've talked to other labor lawyers since then. To a seminar I went to on sexual harassment, they say, don't call something a sexual harassment case if it's not really sexual harassment. And that's what Fox Crossing did. And that certainly contributed to it being the mess that it's ended up being.
Len, I want to talk to you about a lot of that, but before we do, since we're talking about Mandy's testimony, I want you to take a look at part of her testimony now, and then we'll discuss it.
Winnebago County Sheriff's Office investigation beginning in this matter in May of 2018?
Yes.
Did you personally request that investigation?
It was through, I believe it started through my attorney, and then that's how the police department had gotten involved.
Okay. You didn't personally take it upon yourself to go?
I didn't know.
Now, Mandy, if you looked at each of these incidents in a vacuum, isolated from all the others, do you think you would be so scared or frightened?
As a whole, it scares the living daylights out of me. As a whole, yes, but there's also the 3 incidences, obviously him knowing where looking up my whole family, the fire and the fury, and then just a handful of days after that telling me that, I drive on this dangerous highway. So those those are major to me, but as a whole, yes. Some of the smaller incidences, because there are smaller incidents, but they were smaller incidents that were sometimes daily, if not, every other day or weekly or whatever. They happen all the time.
And emotionally speaking, can you separate any of these incidents?
No, it's just you have to look at it as a whole and think, it's unbelievable.
Here's the tough question. Why didn't you quit?
I did not quit. I am the insurance holder for my whole entire family. I have 2 kids, so we obviously need the insurance. And then, I truly enjoy my job. I truly enjoy what I do. I enjoy coming to work. I enjoy all the other people besides Mr. Kachinsky that I work with. They're a joy to be around. I'm never sick. I enjoy my position there, minus everything else here.
Do you feel supported by the administration and HR?
Absolutely, they're 110% behind me.
And did you feel that you had family support at this time?
Absolutely, same.
Even with that support, did you still feel scared or harassed by the actions of the defendant?
Pretty much on a daily basis, yes.
So that support didn't take away from how you felt by Mr. Kachinsky's actions?
Right.
Mr. Kachinsky, that was Mandy's emotional testimony. What do you have to say?
And we argued, and I believe that it was certainly exaggerated. Most people, upon getting something saying, I was trying to do a contingency plan, for example, for what to do if Mandy was ever sick for an extended period of time. That shouldn't frighten you. She was afraid that I was going to sabotage her car or something and cause her to not be available for work. That was absurd. She was afraid that somehow that I was going by her house. I never got within 10 or 15 miles of it. As I said during the trial, it was the Greenville Y, and here, near Appleton was the closest I ever got. There was her statements, just generally about what or how often the emails were and stuff that were disturbing in nature, and she would just take everything and exaggerate it and become fearful. And even looking up her relatives, I just ran into some names when I was looking up her parents to send them a letter, and I used something called whitepages.com, which is a free resource. I was looking up where her mother lived, because I was going to send something to her explaining what this tracking thing was, where I found her at Mandy's residence one day in April.
Yeah.
And in the process of looking it up on whitepages.com, I get I get her brother's address too that she apparently didn't know, because her brother had the same first and last name as her dad, which I used to look up her mom. So she got exaggerated and took stuff and just kind of blew it out of proportion. I think that's what the jury found.
Now, Mr. Kachinsky, your judicial disciplinary proceedings, are you going to be able to continue your judgeship?
Well, I'm still thinking about how we're going to deal with that at this point. There certainly is one consideration, is that if I am reinstated by the Supreme Court, I may have a rather hostile environment to have to deal with at Fox Crossing. The second of all, that if I wanted to terminate the appointment of Ms. Bartelt, the village would do everything in its power probably to try to obstruct it. For example, there's already in effect a resolution saying, that Bartelt gets moved to finance if I terminate her appointment as a clerk, and that I can hire a replacement 20 hours a week at minimum wage, which is ridiculous, because Ms. Bartelt's pay, and the going rate for something like this in our part of the country is about 2.5 times the minimum wage. I've researched it for some of the local courts. So the village, I think, would probably obstruct me from, in every bureaucratic manner they could, from reassuming the bench. I mean, I have to see, but it seems to be their attitude.
Mr. Kachinsky, would you want to terminate Mandy?
Well, we've got this restraining order in place that says we can't have any conversations, that are not essential to the operation, and it just the personal dynamics there are so poor, regardless of her ability to do tasks. Her ability to do the tasks is really pretty good. It would just not be a workable team. So that's really the consideration, not that her lack of technical ability. She's got good technical ability, but the strain and the everything else would make it very difficult to function over a long term.
So if you were to terminate her, it would be because of the accusation and because of interpersonal relations, nothing to do with her work performance.
Well, it would be, a classic personality conflict. I have a feeling it's not going to happen. I think they're going to, if I know, I'm not interested, frankly, in spending a lot of personal funds to fight Fox Crossing, if they're going to throw more bureaucratic obstacles at me. So we'll just have to see what Fox Crossing has to say. So that may be some time off. I may just, but I think any normal thinking person would realize that Ms. Bartelt and I cannot effectively work together. I mean, even well before the trial. She filed a suit against me seeking damages for intentional infliction for emotional distress, which the jury also probably found interesting. And after having taken those kind of legal steps, it's really, I can forgive her, as a Christian, as a human being, but we just could not work together.
So are you saying no to terminating?
Saying no to what? Well, I'm going to say I'm not sure. I don't think if I'm going to be back there, that it would be a workable relationship for very long. I mean, my term ends April 30th. If I went back there, putting up with this, sterile, hostile atmosphere for more than 1 or 2 court sessions would just be beyond my capabilities. I think of any person. I've been tested long enough with that kind of silent treatment, they call it, attitude. I mean, she doesn't have to be my friend, but it'd be nice if she was at least a little bit friendly. But if she hates her boss, she fears her boss, and nothing has been done nobody's shown any interest in trying to help her get rid of that fear, or she won't show any interest in getting rid of that fear. It's not a workable situation.
Mr. Kachinsky, thank you so much for being with us today. We have run out of time, but we appreciate your insight, and congratulations on the acquittal.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, now we have to go to a break, but make sure to stick with us. More on this case when we return.